Thank you for joining us. My name is Jeff Moline. I'm a certified arborist with ValleyCrest Tree Care. I work for the ValleyCrest Landscape Companies. We're based in Calabasas here in California, but we're nationwide. We've been in business for 65 years doing this. Today I'm going to talk to you just briefly because I have a subset of things. Being an arborist, I'm technically a tree geek, and I know way too much about trees, so we're going to take just a small topic today and talk about things that you can do on your landscape walks to kind of identify some problems or issues that you may be able to see without having a tree specialist on site. So I just want to show you a few things that you may want to be able to look out for in your communities, because we do like being your eyes and ears for your landscape issues and your tree issues, but you probably see your communities more than we do. And it'd be nice for you to be able to look at some issues and say, hey, is that a problem or is that not a problem? So first thing we'll talk about today is topping cuts. A lot of times in Southern California, what we like to do is round over the entire growth pattern of a tree, and trees, of course, hate that. So they respond in kind by putting out twice or three times as many branches. And the only problem that we see with that oftentimes is we let those go for several years. And with that regrowth, it's not naturally formed, so we have weaker branch attachments that tend to fail a lot more often than the original branch. So keep an eye on your trees that have been topped or rounded over for that branch elongation, because they're most likely more brittle and more prone to breakage, especially in windstorms. Electrical lines adjacent to trees. I just want to point out two things for you. Power lines are up high, okay? Communication lines, telephone, cable are usually where you'll see them running through the trees. They do not present a hazard for you when it comes to fire. But when you get into what we call the secondary lines, above the where the transformers are, that's where you want to be watching out for your trees being in contact with lines. Broken or partially attached branches, this is normally if a tree is overweight or has recently been hit by a windstorm. We'll be wanting to look out for broken branches. Most of the time you'll see them because they'll die, and then you'll see them way up in the canopy. Arborists, we can tell kind of from the structure of a tree whether it's got a broken branch, but what you'll be probably looking for is that dead branch that's still hanging up there. Open cavities or branch trunks. A lot of times somebody will tell you, hey, there's a big cavity in this tree. Doesn't always mean it needs to be removed. Trees react to these things constantly. That's what they do. They have special enzymes where they get wounded to compartmentalize that tissue, seal it off from the rest of the tree. So if you see that, go ahead and give us a call or give an arborist a call before you potentially have to remove an old growth tree from your property. It may not be necessary every time. Dead or dying branches, we get dieback all the time. If you have ever seen a sycamore tree, you probably know what I'm talking about. Our sycamore population here in Southern California is terrible at fighting off the 3 diseases that it gets. So prune for deadwood in certain species annually is a good idea. We do lose a lot of small diameter branches, which can and cannot be a problem depending on how many cars you have parked underneath your trees, but do look out for certain species that do have dieback in them a lot. Eucalyptus and sycamore are usually the two. Multiple branches arriving in a single trunk. If you've ever seen a coral tree, coral trees were not designed to grow from the bottom like they do. They are a single trunked tree. We in the landscape industry years ago decided that they should be multi-trunked and low branching, and so they break apart quite often because they're very brittle. We do this also with a couple of varieties of pear trees where you'll see that the trunk will go up 6 or 7 feet, and then the entire branch set will come out of one unified point that looks like an umbrella. So we do get some branch issues in a certain species that we've designed over the years to do this. So be wary of trees that have all of the branches coming out of one union like an umbrella. Decay and rot can be present in trees and usually is in our old growth trees. There are different indicators of this. More often than not, you're going to want to call an arborist to have that evaluated. Sap running from a tree is not always an indicator that there's rot in the tree. Termite damage is not always an indicator that there's rot in the tree, but we'll be able to tell you one way or the other. It's one of those things you can look out for, but probably call a specialist in at that point. Recent changes in grade. We are getting back into a building boom or redevelopment boom. Please be aware that the root structure of your trees goes out past the drip line, the last branch on the edge. That's where the feeding roots are. Our anchorage roots are in close. Where this tree is reaching out for soil, oxygen, water, nutrients, is out at that drip line. So you're going to want to protect that zone from trucks rolling over it if you can. We know that it's not always available, but if you get the chance, try and protect that tree's feeding root zone. Just some things to be looking for while you're out. Of course, broken hanging branches. Let me see if I can grab this and walk around. This is what we call crossing branching. We try and eliminate this condition because these two limbs will push on each other and degrade the value of the nutrient flow that's going back and forth. This is that witch's broom look. We've topped this tree off probably 2 or 3 years ago, and now we've got those poorly attached branches springing forth. Now you can imagine this tree with a full loaded, weighted canopy with all of its leaves in it. Add rain to that and we get breakage. Unions in the tree. These unions here are called narrow crotch unions. What happens here is two branches are pushing each other apart as they grow. So this becomes a weak point in a tree. We like to see a U shape in a naturally occurring branch. We'd rather not see a V shape. We have a lot of this in some of our species here in Southern California. Not always an issue, but you'll want to be aware that this is a crack point. Bugs and fungus. Most oftentimes, trees die not from one thing. They die from a multitude of things. Usually the third thing is what kills a tree. We get a root issue that becomes a canopy issue that attracts a bug or a pest or attracts a mold or a rot. So a lot of these things are compiled into losing a tree. Therefore, if we watch for them, we can usually stop that first condition or that second condition before we reach a mortality point for that tree. So when we see what we call conchs and mushrooms like this, it's not always a problem. It is a very, very serious indicator in certain large trees. If we do have mushrooms at the base like this, it means we've got some heart rot issues or some root rot issues. And we all know what happens when giant eucalyptus trees get root rot. They like to fall down, but not always in every case. So we just need to call a specialist out at that point. Bugs, we have a multitude of ways of treating bugs, but we also don't want to treat every bug in the tree oftentimes. Sometimes we want to treat just a mite. Well, if we use a bug spray that attacks everything, we take out the beneficial bugs as well. So what have we done for the next season? We've made that species available for anything that wants to come by. So we really need to be specific about what we're diagnosing and how we're treating it. So just some things to be looking for. Building clearance. We like to not have ants and rodents on our roofs. They love to get up there using trees as ladders. So we try and do some spacing with this. If you've ever seen the trash truck come by, we like to think of our streets as beautifully canopied for our cars. We don't realize the trash truck is 12 feet tall. The UPS guy, the FedEx guy, the moving truck is usually our favorite. They usually tackle every low branch for us. So be aware that there's a 14-foot distance that we like to keep over a roadway, 7 to 8 feet over a sidewalk. It's kind of a general rule for arborists. We like to see our communities like this, but we want to keep them off the roofs. You know, we do like the cooling potential that trees offer us in the summertime, but we also don't want to provide that ladder. We also don't want to brush the fascias of our buildings that we just painted, or we have these beautiful things that the builders have been using now. It's the foam rails on all the windows. Well, you know what trees love to do to those? They just scratch it off. It's one little windstorm and you have to repaint the side of an apartment building. So clearance is a good thing. Go ahead, thank you. I'm probably taking up too much time anyway. And think long term. This slide just says think long term. Okay, trees are a living organism for one. They have a lifespan. They cannot live forever, okay? Your communities, everybody, we all think, hey, that tree's gonna live for 300 years, 500 years. Well, it's not a redwood and it's not an oak, okay? A street tree has a lifespan of about 25 years in an urban environment. So we have to be prepared to take action on some of our trees, and we also want to preserve them. So be thinking about removal and replacement programs. Be thinking about what your community is going to look like 20 years from now when we're not here, and be proactive. Thank you.